This is how to dress up as the Stone from the Ban of the Bastards DLC in Kingdom Come Deliverance 1. So now most of his gear isn't actually obtainable in the second game, but I'll go for an example of what gear isn't obtainable in this game. So the Hunter's gloves or leather gloves, hunting boots, fashionable green hose, and the old paint podrons. So these are not actually obtainable in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, but there is different variants of them that look very similar. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and... So firstly we're going to start with the weapon that he uses. So this is the Warhammer. So this is the closest thing to his actual hammer you can get in the second game. So it's slightly spiked on the top, it sticks out a spike, and the end of the hammer where you actually hit the enemies with is slightly spiked. So you actually can grab this in Cuttenberg from a weaponsmith. So the weaponsmith we've been talking about is here on the map. This is exactly where you want to go, and this guy will pretty much sell them. So you might have a bit of a bug where you can't actually get inside the weaponsmith, but obviously you can do, and if you just check any of the weaponsmiths in Cuttenberg, they probably will carry this Warhammer. So yeah, it's a pretty decent weapon overall. It's probably one of the better Warhammers to grab, and obviously if you are fighting armoured enemies, it will go straight through their armour, so it's a pretty decent weapon. Obviously it might be different in your game, most of the traders may not sell this, so you have to probably wait a few days in game to actually grab this weapon, but overall it's a pretty decent weapon. It's probably about 500 groschen to acquire, so make sure you've got a decent enough money to actually buy this, but this is the weapon he uses in the first game. So firstly you just want to get a mail collar. It doesn't really matter what mail collar is as long as it's not a padded one, but you can grab any mail collar and it doesn't really matter because your helmet and your mail hood will be going over the top of this, so you won't actually see it. So the best thing is probably just grab the best one. So the mail collar with a badge is probably the best one, just so yeah, it's probably the best armor stats. So just grab any mail collar, but you won't actually see this because you will be wearing a mail hood over the top. And yeah, it doesn't really matter, so just grab whichever mail collar you prefer, probably the one preferably with the better armor stats. So then now is 2 coifs you can actually acquire to make this look the most like Stone. So if you have the Brunswick coif, which you can get from the pre-order DLC, you can grab this one. And the reason is because if you just wear a mail hood with a coat of arms coif, it will pretty much have a white thing around the head area where it looks padded, which the Stone doesn't have in his, it's just chainmail. And if you wear the mail hood with a coat of arms, it's slightly padded inside of where your face is. But if you wear the Brunswick one over the top of a mail collar and wear the helmet, there is no actual padding where the face is. So in the game, in the first one, he doesn't have any padding underneath the actual coif. So if you do have the Brunswick one, I'll say recommend keeping the Brunswick one. So wear the Brunswick chainmail coif, the mail collar, and yeah, you can acquire those both together. And then the reason is being because you actually do get a crest on the front of it, which he does have on his mail collar, but the crest in his is black and it does have like a hawk or something on it. But yeah, this is actually white and red, but it's the closest thing you can get to it. So I'd recommend getting the Brunswick mail coif, which you get from the pre-order DLC. But if you do not have the pre-order DLC, you can get the mail hood with a coat of arms, and you probably want to get the black and white one, which you can get from one of the areas in the first starting region in Trotsky. So the mail hood we're talking about is the one located at the Nebakov fortress. So they actually do have a white and black mail hood, which is pretty much as close as possible to the one he wears. So now next up for the actual helmet is the steel skull cap. So this is very common, this is quite a common helmet you can get during the game. So you will most likely pick one of these up during the story, and pretty much any guard will carry this. But a guaranteed spawn is in Cuttenberg in one of the armorers, so this is the location where you want to go. And the good thing about this is you will get a 3-tier one. So if you want to pick up a 3-tier skull cap, you can come to this location on the map in Cuttenberg and you can buy one. It's about 400 groschen, depending on how much money you have. Make sure you've got enough money saved up so you can acquire this helmet. But you most likely will pick one up through the story or just free roaming through the game. And pretty much any bandit or any guard or pretty much anyone in the game will most likely carry one of these. And you most likely definitely would have came across one. So if you come to this area in Cuttenberg, you will be able to buy one for about 400 to 500 groschen, depending on what your speech stat and your charisma stat is. So yeah, make sure you grab one of these for the actual helmet so you can complete the top half of the look for Stone. So now next up we're going to do the body. So the actual coat he wears is the fitted coat. So obviously it's not the exact same named one, but this is the closest thing you can get to the actual coat he wears. So the fitted coat is pretty much the closest thing to it. And if you want to grab a 3-tier one, just come to this location on the map. And this tailor in Cuttenberg will sell a 3-tiered version of this coat. So obviously you probably will come across these quite commonly in the game. So if you are in Trotsky, you probably will come across one of these either in a tailor or on a random person in the game, or any random guy or enemy type. You probably will come across one of these. It's just depending on if it's a 3-tier, but if you do come to this tailor in Cuttenberg, you will most likely get a 3-tier one, which is probably what you want. So for the rest of it, you probably just want any kind of chainmail, any kind of cuirass. It doesn't really matter because you won't be able to see these. Noble's belt, noble's pouch if you really want to. It doesn't really matter with a belt and pouch. and then any kind of kaftan or under game percent underneath. It doesn't really matter because you won't see these, so probably I'd recommend getting the best tiered ones and the best type of armored ones. So for the arms, the closest thing to it is the Magdeburg plate arms, so you can grab this from the armor in Kuttenberg, and obviously different locations throughout the game. It's obviously RNG depending on what bandits or enemy types will be carrying these, but if you want a pretty much definite spawn, you can just come to this armorer in Kuttenberg and they will sell them. They're on the site pricey side, about 1700 to nearly 2k groschen, so make sure you got a lot of dough to actually buy these. But these are closest things to the arms he has, where they're slightly revealing on the outer section where your bicep is, and the outside is obviously plate. So this is pretty much the closest things to the actual plate arms he wears in the first game. And if you want it, there's 4 different variations of this. You want the actual black and like slightly brown red ones, so you can just see the straps on the inner side of the arm, because these plates that he wears in the first one, where it's plated on the outside, but on the inside it's revealing with actual straps on them. So this is the closest thing to the plate arms you grab. This is where you can go on the map, just to the Kuttenberg region. This armor will definitely sell some. Obviously, if it doesn't sell it, you can check out the other armors in this area, and they most likely will be able to sell a Magdeburg plate arm. So this is the closest thing to the plates he actually wears in the first game. So for the gloves, he doesn't wear any plated gloves, so you just want riding gloves in this location on the map, and you can probably grab a 3-tiered one. So if you want to get them, you want to kind of get this brown coloured version of them, so it's pretty much identical to the gloves he wears in the first game. So you want to kind of get this little brown, like maroon kind of coloured ones, which are probably the closest thing you can get to the gloves he wears. So yeah, if you come to this trader here on the map, you will be able to grab these. They're fairly cheap, they're nearly 100 groschen, so they're fairly cheap to grab. He doesn't actually wear any plated gauntlets, so obviously your hand protection is not the greatest. But if you want to complete the look, I'd grab these from this trader here. And like I said, they're on the fairly cheap side, so you can probably will be able to afford them if you're able to afford the other armor pieces. Just make sure you try and grab a 3-tier one. So now we have for the boots, the Cumin boots. So these are extremely common. You will come across Cumins wearing these. You kind of want the dark brown version of them. And the reason I'm choosing these is because the shoes he wears in the first game are kind of flicked up where the toes are, and these are the closest things to it. The actual boots he wears are kind of folded over at the top of the boot, but there is no other boots other than the Master Huntsman ones, which are a DLC for Prime, like the Ultimate Edition of the game, which obviously most players will not have. So if you want the closest boots which he wears, which are slightly flicked up where the toes are, you want to grab the Cumin boots in the dark brown colour. So Cumins can be found pretty much anywhere in the game. I'm going to give a few examples of where you can find them. So you can actually find quite a lot of Cumins in the Sigmund's camp, and if you want to try and loot their armour, you just need to wait for him to sleep and either knock them out and loot the bodies or loot the chests after sleeping. So you can probably grab some Cumin boots. There's also a trader in the Sigmund's camp that will most likely sell these too, and other Cumin kind of gear. So if you want to grab them, you can go there. Obviously there's side quests like the Peter Suchaski side quest where you fight 5 Cumins at the end of the quest, and they most likely will be carrying these. Or you can also do the Bellator's side quest where you can fight off a few Cumins in an abandoned castle, and they will most likely will be carrying these. So for the rest of the legs, you want to get some padded chalices. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. So there's 3 different variants of this, but the one you want is probably the green or the grey version. He actually does wear like a green version of these pants, but I don't really like the look of the green one. It doesn't really match the rest of the armor well. It's just like a dark green, so we're just going to go with the dark grey ones that just like kind of have like a hint of green in them. So this is a location where you need to come on the map in Kuttenberg, and this tailor should sell them at a 3-tier version. So you obviously want to get the best items, so 3-tier is probably what you want. You probably will come across these in the game as well, like random loot, so if you do have something in your inventory, that should be great. So yeah, they're about 200 groschen, you can buy them from this tailor in Kuttenberg. So yeah, that's pretty much the rest of the armor for this guide, and yeah, it looks pretty awesome. So this is the weapon and the armor. It doesn't really matter what jewelry you have, so any jewelry will do because you probably won't see it. It just depends on how high your charisma is wanting to be. So depending on that, you can have a high charisma depending on the jewelry. Well, that doesn't really matter because it doesn't really affect the actual look of the character. The same with the pouches and the belts. Anyways, cocksuckers, motherfuckers, I will see you in the next one. Adios.